If you have ever felt like you just don't know who you are anymore, or you feel or have felt like you have lost yourself in your relationship with others, or just in the role, maybe it's in the role of a mom, role of being a daughter, role of being wife or husband, and you don't know who you are anymore. You don't know what makes you happy. You don't know what your wants, your desires are, and you don't have the confidence to lead your own life. And maybe this has been your story for years, and you are wondering or you want to unhook. You're tired of being this way. You want to take off your mask and be your true and authentic self. If that's the case, you can tune in to this week's episode where Elizabeth Foster and I have an amazing conversation about exactly how this happens in the first place. And then what can you do? What are some simple beginning steps so that you can unhook from these old patterns, these old ways of being? Elizabeth Foster is a self love coach and she has transformed her life. And we talk about how we have done things differently with our kids. So if you're a mom or you're a dad or you're someday wanting to be a parent, then this episode is for you. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I'm Kim Gross, your host, and today I have Elizabeth Foster with me in the house. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. But before we jump in, I'll start with the quote that you shared with us by the one and only Maya Angelou. And I love this one. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. We'll talk about that quote in a few minutes. But because if I jump in now, I'll forget to have you introduce yourself. So let's start with having you introduce yourself in your own words and then tell us a little bit about your story. Like, where did you get started on becoming a self-love coach? What was your story? Just chat with us for a little bit.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me here today, Kim. I'm so excited to be
Of
part of it.
course.
Thank you. I've listened to your show. I absolutely love it. And so I'm just really excited to be a part of it. Absolutely. Yeah. For me, I am a transformational self-love coach. I really help women healing their pain and stepping into their power by realigning their thoughts, beliefs, and actions to align with their true selves. And how this came to be started about 4 years ago, my wild ride or my messy middle, however you wanna look at it, but I was in a marriage for 20 years and completely lost myself in that marriage and, didn't know who I was anymore and just was sitting in a lot of pain. I was lonely, I was sad, I was just feeling completely disconnected from self, and I realized that I had to make a choice. It was either love him and lose me or leave and find me and start loving myself. And so in that moment, I made a really hard decision. We had the picturesque thing going on with the home and the great community, both good jobs, 2 kids, the dogs, the picket fence, the whole thing. And something cracked in me or rattled awake, as the book I just wrote in is. And it's time to start living for me now and start choosing me. And so I remember I was out to dinner with a girlfriend and I said, I'm leaving my marriage. And it just came out of nowhere. And she said, "What?" And that was that within that week, I told him, I packed my bags and I walked away from everything I had known for the last 20 years and completely rebuilt my life.
Let's pause. Can we pause there for a second? Because I think there's a really juicy part that you said, which I think so many people can relate to, particularly women, and more so, particularly people pleasers. You
Mm.
said you lost yourself, and help me to say it again the way you said it, because you said it so beautifully. You said I could either lose me
And
and
love him.
love him,
Yep.
or
I could
walk
choose
away and
myself
choose
serving
yourself.
me.
Yeah. So let's talk about that part about losing yourself. Can you go deeper into that and really explain what did that look like for you that you were losing yourself? And what does that mean, quote unquote, lose yourself?
Sure. Great question. I could go back to the beginning. I very much grew up in a home with a mom who was very to the extreme people pleaser, didn't set boundaries, just was completely lived for everybody else. And so I grew up learning that behavior and really just sacrificing self for others and almost looking at it like that was a good thing. Since then, I've learned it's not, but it took me years to really understand that. But I think I fell into a marriage that the marriage I did and was so attracted to my ex-husband for the reason that my father left at a very early age. He just picked up and left and never came back. And because of that, I was given this false sense of security with my ex-husband that he would be there, he would take care of me, he would protect me, provide me all the things. I call it the Jerry Maguire syndrome when you look to somebody else to complete you. Never works.
Never.
And I definitely did that. And in the marriage, it was very codependent. It was me really looking to somebody else to provide all the things for me and not really having the confidence in myself that I needed to be the person I needed to be for myself and my children. And there was a part of me that, after years of that, just really wasn't sure who I was, how I fit in. For a long time, I was mom, I was wife, I was friend, I was daughter, I was whatever. But as my children got older, things started evolving and changing. I found myself in a place where it was like a crossroads of uncertainty, and I had to choose left or right. I had to choose my hard, as I say. I could choose my hard to stay or and continue along the path I was doing, or I could choose the hard to step into fear and the unknown and really understand what was really my true path and purpose. And so I made that tough choice to do that. And through that process, I tell everybody it's not pretty. It's not pretty, but everything I've learned and everywhere I've gone through that process that's brought me where I am today was just, if I look back, there were so many gifts, so many lessons, so many magical moments that I am so grateful that I chose the direction I did.
I love that. And I do want to come back to that too, because that's such an important lesson as well, is to be able to look at our life experiences from a place of abundance rather than lack. But when you're in it, it's very hard to look at it that way. It's only in hindsight that saying hindsight is 2020. But I want to go back even a step further to what you were saying about how in your relationship with your ex-husband that you looked to him to do all the things, to take care of you, to be, I think what I heard was almost like be the rock,
Mhm. Yeah,
the sense of security.
he definitely was the rock, and I put all of my worth, I wrapped all of my worth around him,
Yeah.
um, and
I think that's that's an important point to really highlight, especially for those that are listening, if they're moms and they have young, if they have children, forget about what age they are, just children that are not married yet
Yep.
or into very serious relationships yet, or if they are,
Mhm.
to be aware of these messages that you're sending, that I'm sending, and many others like us, because if people start hearing that message a little bit sooner, they might make a different choice about the people they choose to be in relationship with. So I have a daughter that's 21 and I have a son that's 24. It doesn't matter if it's just my daughter, because very easily my son could fall into a relationship where he loses himself. And actually, I really give him a lot of credit and props because right now he's not in a relationship. He just got out of one. And he said to me, as hard as it is, mom, to be by myself and be alone, I have to be able to be comfortable in my own skin. I have to know who I am. And this is my time to find who I am. And he's 24.
I love
And
that.
right, because I got to tell you,
That's amazing.
at 24, I was already married. And 24, now I'm 55. So looking back, 24, I was a baby. If my son got married now, he's a baby. 24 is still so young.
Yes. Yes.
So if we can start to, you and I and others like us, start to shift that paradigm, that message that we give to our kids. And I know you have kids around the ages of my kids as well, and start to have a different conversation so that they don't lose themselves, whether it's in a friendship or a romantic relationship. Like, how do you stay centered in who you are? Right. And so, if we were to start to cultivate and create a message
Mhm.
or just give a piece of advice, what would you say to even your, how old were you when you married your ex-husband? Were you in your 20s?
Well, we started dating at 19. I had my child, I was pregnant at 21,
Yep.
and we got married at 25 and then had our second at 26. We were pleased
I
with babies,
I
right?
consider it being a baby. So
Baby,
here you are now, knowing what you know now. What would you say? This is such a proverbial cliche saying, but really, seriously, what would you say to your 19-year-old self when you started dating him, your 21-year-old self?
I think it's important that we slow down and take time to not feel like we have to fit in. It's
Yeah.
so important that we stop trying to fit in to a certain mold of what life is supposed to look like or be. We have to really get quiet and be able to sit with ourselves and really understand what it is we want and need. And until we do that, we start just taking in everything that's given to us versus us being intentional and directing our own lives. So I think it's important that we can do that and that we can honor our feelings instead of shoving them down and just putting a smile on our face, right? It's like we go out into the world and we put on this mask and we be to your point, this is the name of your podcast,
Yeah.
right? We put on this mask and we show the world what we think the world wants to see. But in reality, once we are able to take that mask off and show up and be confident in who we are, there's a whole world out there that's ready to accept that. But we have to be able to walk through that fear of not being accepted in order to be accepted.
Yeah.
Right? And I think at that age, it's very hard to do because we're so vulnerable, right? We're trying to figure out who the heck we are at that age. We have no idea. We're exploring and figuring it out. And if we don't make that space to do that self-discovery, then we just become reactive to everything that's given to us versus really taking the time to figure out what we want that to look like and going after it.
Yeah. 100%. And I think it goes even a step further and even deeper because you said at that age, we start to feel afraid of who are we? What are we supposed to do? And so we just become reactive and we don't feel confident to still be ourselves. And if we go even deeper, and I'm sure you also have a story like mine where you go back to childhood and you learned, you were conditioned
Right.
that it wasn't okay to be your true self. So by
Oh,
the time
no.
you hit your 20s, right? And you already have this conditioning, these neural pathways that are ingrained. It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not safe. Can't be myself. Can't be myself. And that has been happening for years and months and days and weeks and minutes over and over, like really ingrained. So now you're in your 20s and it's freaking like just normal that you are trying to find yourself. And so it seems likely that you would go down this path of just becoming reactive. Well, society says I should go to college, I should get a good paying job, I should get married, I should have the house with the white picket fence and the two dogs and the two kids and live in the da, da. And so we follow like sheep in a herd. Okay, that's what society tells me. And if I don't do that, then somehow I'm not measuring up and I'm not okay. And even for people who take a non traditional path, they're only worthy if they're killing it, like rocking it, making millions. If someone didn't go to college and they didn't do all those things, but they started a business and they have a lot of money, okay, then you're okay because you're making a lot of money. But those that are just still floundering, and I know many, particularly males that are in their mid to late 20s that haven't figured it out, they're still floundering and they feel like utter failures, like
Yeah.
they don't matter,
Adequate. Yeah.
inadequate. But at the end of the day, you are freaking worthy just because you were born.
Yes.
Just
Thank
because you
you.
were born, you're
Oh,
freaking worthy. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, who you are is enough.
that's right.
And that's the message that is not implanted or ingrained into our kids. And that's why we're in the state of affairs that we're in.
Mm,
And everyone's freaking reacting.
that's right. Yeah. I
Ah,
mean,
what do you think about that?
him, I have a 19-year-old that constantly questions himself
Yep.
because you know what? He doesn't want to go to college right now. He's not the academics kid, right? He's
Yeah.
not the school kid. And he's working retail and everyone's will go to trade school. I'm sorry, but he's not a trade school kid, right? Like he doesn't know how to hit a hammer. He doesn't know how to plunge a toilet. That's not him. So it's if you don't fall in one of these categories, it's like everyone's trying to fix you and help you figure it out and push you into a box because then they feel comfortable. Then they're okay. Because God,
Yes.
we have to project our own stuff onto everybody in order for us to be okay, right?
Amen.
And you know what? This kid is beautiful. He is
Mm.
the most amazing soul I have ever met. For a 19-year-old boy to be able to hug his mom and tell her that he's proud of her and he loves her, like that's an emotionally secure individual.
Yes.
I'm more proud of that than anybody out there that's going to Harvard and doing all this crap because I'm
Yeah.
sorry, at the end of the day, it's going back to that quote, right? It's how you show up, how you treat people that matters, not your status, not your wealth, not all the superficial crap that people want to project onto us.
So your son in this situation is a beautiful example. It's a beautiful message to the listeners that either A or in your son's situation where they are feeling like an utter failure because they don't have all the outside embellishments that one would normally praise, or if they are most likely a lot of my listeners are moms. So if they're either with young kids or teenagers, young adults, so, what are some of the different things that
Mhm.
you say to your son or that we could say differently to our kids? Is your son thinking, does he feel that pressure from people trying to put him in a box? Number one.
Yes, sure he does.
And then how do you have conversations? Let's get down to the nuts and bolts of okay, if someone listens to this one episode out of all the episodes I've created, they're like, I'm freaking going to do this differently with my kids. What could we say to them?
Put down your own expectations. Stop projecting your own fear. Just be able to sit there and really listen.
Mm.
Just listen because you will learn so much just by listening and being there. I am very grateful because both of my children sometimes tell me too much, but
Yes, I know.
they're comfortable coming to me and talking to me about everything they're feeling, real life stuff. And to me, I consider that the greatest gift because
Yeah.
it says I've created that space for them to be able to do that. And I think the more we're able to put down our own stuff and really just be there and listen and just offer that space for them to feel what they need to feel, to really explore what they're thinking, and to allow them to know that it's okay. they get to decide. They get to choose what this looks like. And they don't have to figure it all out today. They can take their time, they can try out different things. And if it doesn't work, guess what? There'll be something else on the other side of that. And part of this is we have to learn through trial and error, right? We have to be able to teach kids it's okay to fail, because by letting them fail and make mistakes, they are able to learn through that and to grow and to become the people they're supposed to be. And wouldn't we want someone like that for ourselves?
I
You
wish
know,
I had that.
I do too. I had a mother that was like, okay, you're going to college, you're going to get a good job, you're going to get married. She had my whole life planned out because she was projecting her stuff that she didn't get onto me.
Yeah.
And then when I didn't accomplish those things, I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me?
Mm.
I'm a failure. Versus, you know what? It's okay. This isn't clearly what's meant for me. So now let me try something else. If we can give kids that message, then we're allowing them to feel confident and exploring and challenging themselves to try new things versus feeling like they have to fit into this certain box that we put them in.
I love that you keep saying that phrase, like putting them into a box, because that is how I felt my whole life. And that is also what I did with my own kids before I knew better. They were 10 and 13 when I was first introduced to Dr. Shafali and conscious parenting. Right. So when I started to learn differently, I did differently. And what you were just talking about a moment ago is so key, is that we as the parents have to do our own freaking inner work so that we can hold the space, hold the container, not project and vomit our stuff onto them, so that when they are having their big emotions of I don't feel worthy, of course they won't use these words, but that's what the feeling will be, because they're comparing themselves to their peers and they're hearing the messages, they're seeing it on social media, especially now the social media. Everything looks great and amazing and wonderful for everyone out there. And then you start to compare, my life doesn't feel like that, or my life doesn't look like that. So just to be able to hold the space, not judge,
Mhm.
not criticize,
Yes.
and not put our stuff onto them and hold. See, what I would do is I would go into fear of the future all the time.
Yes.
So if my daughter was, and this just even happened not long ago, and she called me out on it, and thankfully now I can have the wherewithal to pause, take a step back, hear what she's saying, hear the truth in what she's saying, and then I can take a different direction. But this was just fall semester, it was her last semester of her undergrad school.
Oh,
And she was playing tennis, but she had to take this science class, and she's not a science person. It was like a chemistry thing that she needed for graduation. And she missed a bunch of classes for tennis matches, which was okay. She was allowed to, but she fell so far behind. She didn't know what was going on. And she would tell me, oh my God, I'm going to fail. And she got herself worried. Then I took off and I went into outer space somewhere like, oh my God, now you've all this work, 3.5 years. Now you're going to fail. You're not going to get your diploma. I went to
oh, mom.
catastrophizing worst case scenarios, like bad, right? And then she's, Mom, you're not making this any better for me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, she ended up with a B in the class and she ended up doing what she had to do. She graduated and everything was fine. But I think moms can do that a lot. Parents can do that. We can go into this worry, fear, projection mode as well. And then projecting that the worst case scenario in the future. And then we try to fix and control our kids,
Yes. Oh,
also sending them the message that they're not okay.
oh, yes.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and a lot of it is it's just like anything, it's our brain trying to keep us safe, right? And to protect us. It's what our brain wants to do. It's wants to stay in comfortable, it wants to stay in familiar. So it's just going back to those limiting beliefs and old conditioning, right? And saying, nope, this is how it's supposed to be. But we don't understand as humans, we are so resilient and we have the ability to overcome so much. It's just believing that we can, right? It's changing our mindset and shifting our beliefs. And when we tell ourselves we can't do something, then we won't. The great quote by Henry Ford, whether we think we can or we think we can't, we're right. So you have to shift the way you're thinking about something. And this is the work I do with my clients. It's okay. So tell me, is what you're thinking, is that true? Or is that just what you're choosing to believe? Because a lot of times we're just choosing to believe the worst case scenario to keep ourselves safe. But the reality is we are safe. We are okay. And we have to get grounded and remind ourselves we have everything we need. And no matter the outcome, either we'll learn something or we'll be successful with it. But either way, it's a win. So we have to change the way we're talking to ourselves and to others about failure.
I love that. And I have to just say that, oh my God, your kids are so blessed to have you as their mom and to offer those messages and to come from, even if you don't say that to them outwardly, because, our kids don't often listen, but just the fact that you live that, if you
Mhm.
live that message and you exude that energy, they're going to, by osmosis, pick up on it and they're going to feel, just like the quote, they're going to feel that from you. I
Oh, they
feel
will.
that, right? That mom has this mindset of, or this practice of choosing the mindset of I can instead of I can't.
And here's the other thing I'd like to add. We're going into Mother's Day weekend, right?
Yes.
Mother's Day to all the moms coming up. We're human first. And I say this to my kids all the time. I'm not going to do everything perfectly. I want you to remember just because I'm mom, I'm still human first. And there's going to be things I can do really well. Gosh, I can nail out a great conversation and help you fix world problems. But if it comes to doing math or fixing a tire or doing things that are out of my zone of genius, forget about it. But I'll find the answer for you. But it's important to always give ourselves some grace, to show ourselves some love and compassion as moms, because it's a really hard job. There's no rule book. And listen, I haven't always been a great mom. There's been a lot of moments I haven't been a great mom, but I've always told my kids I love them. I've always been there to support them, and I've always done the best I could with what I knew at the time. And you know what? When you know better, you do better. And through this journey, I have started doing better because I do know better. And so I am a better mom today than I was 10 years ago. But you know what? We are all evolving. My children, myself, the relationship, the dynamic. And as we go on this path, I am learning with them. We're learning together. And that is the beautiful relationship between a parent and a child.
I love that you said that. And it's a beautiful place to round out the conversation. I just ditto that. And I love and appreciate that you were open and honest to say, I wasn't always like this. I wasn't perfect. There were times, there was a season, and I'm right there with you. Like I said, before the ages of 10 and 13, I really didn't know what I was doing. And even once I started to learn that it was more about me than it was them, it was still a journey.
Yeah.
And what I talk about all the time when I'm helping perfectionists is that the antidote to perfectionism is grace, is compassion, self compassion.
Mhm.
And I think I would just add one last thing because if perfectionists are listening, they're like, but I can't have compassion for myself, or I struggle to, or it's so hard to have grace. That it's baby steps, right? Just baby steps. Again, don't go into, okay, now I have to have grace and compassion for myself all the time, because then that just becomes one more thing that you're trying to do. So just little baby steps.
It's practice. Everything is practice, right? I'm not perfect at it. There's still moments where I struggle and I have to remind myself, girl, you do this for everyone else. You can do it for yourself. You got this. Slow down, breathe. Like it's going to be okay. And it's important, like perfectionism, control, all of that is based around fear, right?
Yes.
Very much fear. And we just have to, in those moments, remind ourselves we're okay. We're safe. It's just our bodies protecting us. Put your hand to your chest, take a deep breath, and be like, how else can I look at this? And a lot of times in those moments when we're able to slow down and do that, we realize it's not that bad. We can
Yeah.
get through this and we'll be okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just so grateful that I've had this opportunity and this platform to really share with you, especially with Moms Weekend coming up and being
Yes.
moms to be able to have this conversation and chat. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's been awesome. It's interesting because I love having organic conversations. I always think it might go one direction and then it goes another, but I just follow the energy. And I didn't think we would talk so much about being a mom and parenting, but I
Yeah.
loved it. It's right where we went. So I'm just going to round out with a few rapid fire questions, if that's okay, just for the listeners to know a little bit more about you. So, what would you say is the most prominent mask that you have worn, quote unquote mask?
I would definitely say people pleasing,
People
just putting
pleasing.
everybody else before myself. Yes.
If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Right now, probably either Italy or Thailand.
Mm. What is one memory from adolescence that most stands out for you?
Oh goodness. Riding my banana seat. I had this rainbow bike with all of the clinky things on the tires and the lights and the streamers. I was your typical girly girl, and I would just ride my bike everywhere, having the best time ever. And it's one of those memories. I still love riding bikes, right? Because it just brings me back to that youthful part of myself where I can just be free and have fun and be joyous.
Mm, I love that. Last question. Since we were talking about people pleasing, what is your favorite way to take care of yourself?
I would say ordering in, this is my favorite Friday night, ordering in Thai and taking a hot bubble bath with a favorite book and a cup of hot tea and candles. It's just
Mm,
nothing more relaxing than that.
awesome. So, where can the listeners find you?
I'm on Facebook, so they can go to Elizabeth Foster on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn. I have a website for the love of self.coach, so they can find more about me there. But really, all over social media, definitely connect with me if you resonate with my story. I'd love to hear from you and stay connected.
I love it. So, people, oh, listen up. If you want this conversation and others like it, then I encourage you, I invite you to like or subscribe. It's so important to get this message out and to help others to just learn how to take off the masks, learn how to grow into more self love and compassion. And you can help to do that by reviewing, liking, or subscribing. And as always, I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And I will see you next time on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists.